trying to get fired.
There's only one way you can get fired. You have to move out of town. I mean, like, seriously, it's the only way you can do it.
That doesn't apply to rabbis for some reason.
Terrible connection.
Guys, this is adult conversation, not being positive.
My mother, she's resting again. She said rabbi was no job for a Jewish boy. Doctor, yes. Lawyer, yes. Accountant, yes. Rabbi, no. But she only knew like a congregational rabbi. Yeah.
70 years old. Okay. So I have one.
We're gonna sneak one around.
Huh?
I remember when they became.
Hurry and convince Shivam Shana.
God,
We're good to go.
We thought we were using Mashiach.
It's rakes. I used to get baseball cards. Okay,
Well, better than last week.
it's ready to roll.
Last week was like tea.
This is
Really? What? What?
Week.
I told me that last week.
Well, how did you know not to complain?
We have a big
I'm
twist
trying to get
today.
fired.
You trying to get fired? Or you want to get Doge?
Brother Kier, I have an idea. I have a new business.
They have to send the
Ad, you're an attorney, you're an accountant, Gerald? I have a new business. You'll make a fortune. It's called Doge. D-O-J-E. Department of Jewish
efficiency.
Efficiency. And they go in
They'll never
and
work.
audit every yeshiva, every shul, every tzedakah.
Governor of Congress have to tell the government what we did last week. Five things they did.
They took up time and space.
Okay, ready to roll? Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Today's share is sponsored Zecher Nishmas Vega Bas Chanukh, Harvey's mother, on her 16th yahrzeit this coming Thursday. Shama shall have an aliyah.
Amen.
I picked the topic of today's share actually based on the date. Today's date is Chaf Hei Shvat, which is actually the yahrzeit of the founder of the Musar movement, Rabbi Yisroel Salanter. He was nifter in 1883, which makes it over 140 years ago. Rabbi Yisroel was known for, I'll put 4 things, 4 major accomplishments. Number 1, obviously, is the Musar movement. The idea of studying Musar, morals, ethics from the Torah was probably the most famous innovation of Rabbi Yisroel Salanter. That itself, calling it an innovation, needs its own explanation. Musar was something you clearly see throughout the Torah, but Rabbi Yisroel Salanter put an extra emphasis on it. His idea was considered radical, revolutionary at the time. He did it first and foremost to battle the Haskalah movement, but over time, for the most part, the Musar movement was accepted throughout the Jewish world. Till today, that for the most part, Musar is something believed in, to a certain degree studied in many yeshivas, some yeshivas more than others. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter, with that, a second point he very much focused on, and his Talmidim stressed this more, is the idea of mitzvos bein adam u'chavera. It's not just mitzvos bein adam u'makom is a big deal, mitzvahs between you and God, but mitzvahs between one fellow man is also of utmost importance. Right? The 2 luchos are side by side, equal. One has, for the most part, mitzvahs bein adam u'makom. The second one has mitzvahs bein adam u'chavera. The Yisroel Salanter championed that idea. A third idea of Rabbi Yisroel Salanter, which I actually saw some Talmidim stressed as maybe the greatest accomplishment, but he was very big into spreading Torah. The concept of Harbatzas Torah was very, very big by Rabbi Yisroel Salanter, And you see his students went out to far-ranging places to spread Torah. And just an ideal of that today. The base manager right before we came into share, he said Tillam for a very chashuv Marbitz Torah, so by Feivelson, Shavar Fush Lema, who is Rosh Yeshiva in Tzfas. Now everyone knows Tzfas is a place of mysticism, but Tzfas is also a place of Malkum Torah, and it's been growing and growing, Baruch Hashem. But in the strip there where all the Torahs go, you wouldn't even notice it. Once in a while you'll see a yeshiva guy with Svarim and this, right across one of the older shuls. You dip in there, there's a beautiful base medrash, there's a kol learning there. This has been going on for decades upon decades. Now to go out to Tzfas 50 years ago was a big deal because there weren't B'nai Torah in Tzfas. And that concept, that idea, is really the whole bedrock. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter was very big into Abatzas Torah, into spreading Torah, Musar, and his Talmidim, you see, took it as an opportunity, as something very important to spread. The Musar movement wouldn't be here if not for the Talmidim spreading it. That's the third idea. And the fourth idea really connects to how we're going to begin to share, is the concept of limud halacha. A rabbi, limud halacha, that's like the most basic element. Well, let me explain. The most simple idea of the Musar movement is the idea that you should learn ethical, moral text, different svarim, and even just a pure limud, knowing it, understanding it, seeing the depth of it. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter pushed, sort of like, careful the words I choose to describe it, but a person self-motivating himself in it. A person could sit in a room alone and read text, and he sings it, he focuses on it, it stirs a person's emotions. That's the classic idea of what Rabbi Yisroel called Limud Musar B'Spailos. Rabbi Yisroel had another idea, that if you learn something in depth from the halacha onward, that has a very big impact on a person. We usually think of we come to halacha share, okay, so we'll gain more knowledge. Yisroel says it's a deeper idea. Is anything you invest your brain power to really focus on, to learn deep, it has an impact on you. So let's say, for example, a person struggling, in his kibbud of aim. So you know what? Best thing to do is learn the Gemaras and Kedushin, go through the Rishonim, go through the Shulchan Aruch, and you go through all the halachos. Limud halacha of kibbud of aim will make a person better at it. It could be he knew all those halachas beforehand in terms of the practical halacha, but in terms of the depth and the connection to it, a person connects to things by halacha. And one more addendum to that is, there's a great story through Yisroel Salanter. One time he was with another person, another Rav, and the Rav saw Rabbi Yisroel's curious behavior. Rabbi Yisroel was famous. There's so many stories of Rabbi Yisroel Salanter doing things that others wouldn't. Probably the most famous story is everyone was in shul for Yom Kippur, night of Yom Kippur, and where's Rabbi Yisroel Salanter? All waiting for him. Somebody left a crying little baby in their house alone because everyone ran to shul for Kol Nidre. So Rabbi Yisroel Salanter heard the baby crying on his way to shul, stopped what he was doing, taking care of the baby. Think what other people wouldn't do. But Rabbi Yisroel Salanter said to this Rav, who once questions his behavior, where does this come from? So he says, Gemar Baba Kama. The Rav said, Gemar Baba Kama? Where in the Gemar Baba Kama? Yisroel turned to him and says, my Baba Kama has more chapters than your Baba Kama. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter would learn out halachas that other people didn't know existed. Quote unquote, he'll read between the lines. And his chidushim in halacha and Ian were so great that he just expanded what the Torah expects of you. And I hope to show that today. But simply, our share is entitled today, Rabbi Yisroel Salanter and the Isser Yichud. A pretty, I'll call innocuous title, until one person contacted me. He's like, did Rabbi Yisroel Salanter not keep Hilchos Yichud? Of course, Rabbi Yisroel Salanter Hilchos Yichud. He kept Hilchos Yichud probably better than anyone else. But I would like to go through the classic ideas of Hilchos Yichud as it is. We're at the very end of Shovavim. It's a good time to learn these halachos. Then, the second part of the share, I hope to be a nice twist in a different direction, really, for Yisroel Salanter. So, let's begin with the basics in Hilchos Yichud, a very important halacha. I look back quite a few years ago, we talked about the topic of Yichud in reference to therapists and the dangers involved where people have one-on-one therapy. And there were situations where, unfortunately, boundaries were, in the Jewish world, were abused. And the importance of understanding the halachos of Hilchos Yichud, we did that, focused in on that topic. Today, I want to do a more broader discussion of the Isser and really switch into Rabbi Yisroel Salanter's Chiddush. So, if you look in Shulchan Aruch Even HaEzer, Siman Chaf Beis, I'll start from the top. Halacha says, "Asa the Yachid in the Erva Meharayos, Bein Zikna Bein Yolda." It's asa for a person to be alone with one of the Arayos, a married woman, a relative to him, whether that person is old. Does not matter how old the person is. It could be with a 90-year-old lady, in theory. That could be a Isser of Yichud. Or Ben Yalda, even a younger person, quite young. Shedavar zeh gorem legalos erva. Being alone could cause a challenging situation. And it gives examples. Okay, Chasmeim and Benal, mother and child, Av and Bito, Baal and Ishto Nida. Okay, then it goes to the halachos of Chassan, whose wife is a Nida. Okay. But that's the first. Isser Yichud is a Chomer Isser, regardless of the age of the people involved, for the most part. Obviously, little kids, are exempt, but that's pretty little. Right? A lot of these halachas come up. People don't realize, but they come up. Definitely have a 9-year-old boy, and you want to get a babysitter, classic 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, you could run into Hilchos Yichud issues. And Mimela, some high school bachrim should provide their services. Good money. The girls make money on it. You realize that,
They get more than 50 cents an hour.
Oh, yeah.
If a 9-year-old,
right?
if a 9-year-old qualifies for Yibum, then he certainly is one who could be
Fantastic.
subject.
You're 100% right. Correct. So, people keep that in mind. Hilchos Yichud comes up, by children too, babysitters, these type of scenarios. And now, if you look in the Beis Shmuel, I apologize for the small print, but unfortunately, this is the exact print that is used in modern day Shulchan Aruchs. Outside of Aruch Chaim, the print is usually pretty small. But and the Beis Shmuel, I should have maybe blown it up. But the Beis Shmuel brings that the Gemara in Kedushin quotes a pasuk for the Isser Yichud, and Tosos, together with so many Rishonim, all assume that the Isser Yichud is 100% Isser Yichud with an erva is an Isser Daraisa. The Beis Shmuel does bring a Rambam, which says it's only Asr from Divrei Kabbalah. Basr than that. But for the most part, even in Shitas Rambam, people hold it's really a Daraisa. Divrei Kabbalah is more Chomer than the average than the Rabbanan. So any scenario where a person's suffix, if he has a Yichud situation, that's a pretty Chomer thing. That's a suffix Isser Daraisa. And Memela, one has to act accordingly. One has to be careful about such a thing. A suffix Isser Daraisa, that's a big deal. By the Rabbanans or Mekel. But Daraisa, one should be, careful. Now, Again, that's talking about H's Ish or an Erva. If you look in Sif Beis, Kashira Maisa Amnon V'Tamar. Okay, we're not doing the Navi share, Ayin Sham, also for the audience. But when there is the Maisa with Amnon and Tamar, Gazer, David, Beis Dino, David Amelech, and his Bezdin, were Gozer al Yichud Pnuya, on the Yichud of any single girl, the Alpha Bishina Erva, even though she's not a classic Erva, B'chlal Yichud Arayasi. So that was David HaMelech. So David HaMelech added, it's not just Ervas, it's also any single girl. Vishamai Hillel Gazro al Yichud Kusis. And Shammai and Hillel, famous Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, they extended the Isser Yichud to a non-Jew. Does not only apply to Jewish people, applies to non-Jews. Nimsako Misyachim Isha, also Misyachima, Ben Yisroel, Ben Kusis, Makat Shtein, Makas Mardis, Isha Isha, Machrizim Olam. Someone who violates this, Mechaber spells out, you get Malchus, Rabbanim for that.
Even the Kusis?
Huh?
Even the Kusis?
To whatever degree we can control that.
In the business world, this is a big problem.
Correct.
How do you turn away female clients?
Right,
How do you
right.
explain to people in general that you can't be with them.
You know,
in the room?
I remember
Alone
I remember seeing,
We're alone in the room.
Yes,
Right. That's
right.
what I mean.
now we're going to go through, there are multiple heterim for circumstances of Yichud. I'll touch on that in a moment. But you talk about the business world, go back a few years ago, I remember hearing about this. The former vice president, Mr. Pence, was a very religious Christian. And one of the things he was makabel on himself was he never goes out to eat, never alone with another woman. Right? That's an impressive, now that might be more than Hilchos Yichud. We would say also it's a little, strange to have a business meeting or one-on-one, even in a public setting, a man and a woman. That would be, it's better to take someone with. It shouldn't just be a one-on-one. But Lamaisa, we'll see, yes, these Isser Yichud definitely comes up a lot. We'll talk about practitioners, doctors, right? Rabbanim. There are many, many scenarios where Hilchos Yichud comes up, and unfortunately, it's one of those sets of halachas which are not so well known. And even though they're quite common, but nevertheless, all the Svarim and Hilchos Yichud divulge pages to try to understand how come people don't know these halachas, but it's a fact of life. Now, there are basically, I came up with 5 areas of heterim for the Isser Yichud. I want to go through them in general, and then I want to zero in on 1 and 2, which are most prevalent, and we'll talk about. Number 1 is the halacha over here in Tess. You know what? I should do probably Gimel before that. Gimel says, Kol isha she'asa yachid ima, any woman that's also for a man to be with, im haisa ishto imo, but if the man is there with his wife, hareza mutilis yachid, neshe ishto misham rasa. If it's a man, his wife, and another woman, then it'll be okay, because your wife will watch over you. Avalos yaki Yisroelis makusi valbisha ishto imo. A Jewish lady should not be alone with a Gentile man, even if the Gentile's wife is there with him. What's the difference? You could trust Jews, you can't necessarily trust Gentiles on their standard of morality. So if a man is there with his wife, and he could be with another woman, the idea is your wife will watch you. But in the reverse, a Jewish woman with a Gentile man whose wife happens to be there too, no good. The heter specifically for a Jewish couple to watch each other. That's one heter. The heter of Ishto Mishmrasa. No, I'll go a few in order of that. In contrast, that's in terms of watching the man. A woman who's alone with another man, there's a heter for a woman called Baila Be'ir. Her husband's in the city. That heter, by definition, just the words itself, mean even if the man's not there with her. The hashpa of a man over his wife, the fear that she has of transgressing, of doing something wrong, extends beyond the Dawud Amos of where he is. So as long as that husband is in the city, that would be good enough for the woman to be alone with the man, because Baila Be'ir. On the opposite, when the man is there with one other woman, oh, his wife is in the city. No such heter. The wife has to be there watching him. But for the reverse, for the woman, the concept of Baila Be'ir is enough of a mirsis, enough of a scare that should be in check. Yes.
Isn't that also assuming that the wife doesn't know that the husband is specifically not going to be home until a certain time?
Right. There are all these halachos. I'm giving you first just an overview of them, but there's many minutia of halachos. For example, brought up, Baila Be'ir has to be that he could come by at any time. If the husband's working in Manhattan, he only is coming back X amount of time. That's not really Baila Be'ir. Yes.
If you've solved Yichud Magabe one of them, does it work for both of them? Meaning, if a married lady is with a man, but Baila Be'ir, and it works in that case, is that still a problem for the other man?
It's the question. There's a Mesa.
No.
Is it a Lagabe or is it just a blanket protection?
Right.
No,
she has Baila Be'ir.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with
either?
But we're not talking about the other guy.
The question that was asked, I want to put on tape yet.
Great question.
Right? Question that was asked, right? It's clarity. Was that if one of the two parties involved as a heter is allowed to be in that scenario, does that automatically work as a heter for the other one? Very good question. So I think the simple answer is yes. That if this woman has Baila Be'ir, and therefore that's not considered Yichud, that would expand to the guy too.
On what grounds?
Because
on what grounds?
That factor will make it. Now you're right. It gets
Maybe
a little
it just
tricky.
means she won't do anything, but
right.
Who says it means?
There is Hilchos Yichud assumes the man is the aggressor. That's how Hilchos Yichud assumes.
He has his own responsibility.
Yes.
In this trial, there's no. On what grounds is the fact that her husband is in the town? What does that have to do with him?
Yes. Let's play that out. There's since by the Isha, it's by Baila Be'ir. So we say Lagabi the Isha, so nothing's going to happen. What about Lagabi that man? The Maisa is alone with that woman. So Baila Be'ir says she wouldn't do anything. But maybe he'd be the aggressor. Maybe he would do something.
Isn't there also an Indian that all the Hilchos Yichud are focused around the man will do something?
Yeah.
I might suggest something deeper.
Yeah.
If it's appropriate. I'd like to suggest also that that's in place because when a man has been unfaithful, even later a woman can tell. But if a woman's unfaithful, necessarily a man can't tell.
Interesting.
And there's a human aspect to that where it's unwritten maybe, but the shape of those halachas seem to indicate, because
in my opinion, one can tell, the other one can't tell. So
Right.
it goes on one way and not the other.
You bring up a very
Does that
interesting
make any sense?
idea. In halacha, it does talk about halachas are what we call parrots. There's somebody who unfortunately violated the standards, and when we talk about, you know what? I'll venture into the next idea, similar to the concept of Isha Mishmaraso. Let's say the woman's there with another woman, or with a child who would be considered like a shomer. So we say that's only true to a morally solid person. But somebody that already violated things, those halachas will not apply. So halacha does take into account, and it's sort of tricky. Like, how do you know, who these people are, what their history is? Very not simple. Also with that, there's different halachas of one man with multiple women, multiple men with one woman. The halakha goes through different scenarios when it's also when it's mutter. But I really want to just focus in for a moment. I think it's one of the most interesting ones, and most common the term people use, called Pesach Pesuach Rosh Hashanah. There's a classic heter of having an open door. An open door. Now, I'm not going to make you read it because it's an itsy bitsy print, but the Piskei Tshuva here in Halacha Tes brings a machlokas between Rabbi Akiva Eiger and others. Others go on the Chachmas Adam. That Piskei Tshuva doesn't bring that, but I'm telling you that's the last of the people that bring the Shita. That what do you practically need for this heter of Pesach Pesuach Rosh Hashanah, which is the halacha of Tes. Bais or Pesach Pesuach Rosh Hashanah, Ein Choshes is Yachadim Erva. You don't have to be worried about that. So the most common idea, what's called the basic idea, which Rabbi Akiva Eiger fights for, is the door physically has to be open. If you have the door fully open, that's Pesach Pesuach Rosh Hashanah. There are others, Piskei Tshuva brings down to argue, no, the door could be shut as long as it's unlocked. That second opinion is taking a leniency that as long as it's unlocked, technically speaking, someone else could come in and could see what's going on. So since someone could come in and see what's going on, that's a heter. In Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that's not enough. You have to have the door wide open. Now, in general, the world is makel like the second shita, but the first one, something. I remember I was once by the house of one of my rebbeim, who at that point was easily in his 80s, and I think the scenario was because there was a yichud thing. There was maybe someone in the house, and his wife wasn't home. He had the door fully open. Fully open. But Lamaisa, interesting side note, very common scenario. Let's say a man goes into a store. There's only one person in the store, saleswoman. And the metzias is, let's say it's a type of store where they keep the door locked and you have to be buzzed to come in, a jewelry store. With security. You go into that store, not only that violates Pesach Pesuach according to both shitas. Not only is the door seemingly, not only is the door not open, it's physically locked. Is that a problem of Yichud? In the store, you could have walked in. The scenarios for Yichud could start off where it's not Yichud. Just people leave. You have to notice it. Oh my gosh! All of a sudden, you're alone.
What are the chances that there's no cameras in a store like that?
Oh. So that's a whole other discussion.
You can see in it.
Do video cameras, which are not necessarily monitored by a person, 24/7, they could later be. Does that suffice to solve from Hilchos Yichud? Very not pashut.
How about if you have like the perfect example? Somebody there's a silversmith in the community here who has exactly that scenario. He has the ability to open the blinds in the front to a glass window.
So the note of Yehuda says that windows work for Pesach Psuach Rosh Hashanah. Because certainly in Rabbi Akiva Eiger's whole idea of the door being wide open isn't just so people come in, people can see. Now, what that means with seeing is the window has to be clear enough that it can see to any spot in the store. If the window only shows you a view of part of the store, in the corner where it's not in the line of sight, that'll be Yichud.
Does it make a difference if it's by appointment only or anybody can just knock on the door and get buzzed in?
Yeah, but even if you just knock on the door and get buzzed in, but the
They can
issue
always
is
choose not to buzz you in.
right now it's locked. And if we're afraid of impropriety between two parties, then you have a problem. Yes.
I don't know if I'm getting ahead of you or not. How does this apply when you have guests at your house for Shabbos? Some says you have a couple of people over for a simple.
Very important point.
How's it supposed to work?
Very important point. If you happen to have a separate guest wing and there's a separate door over there, that makes it easier. But a lot of times you're right. A person having a guest for Shabbos, Hilchos Achnasas Orchim, does not override Hilchos Yichud. So that has to be taken into account. And yes, it's very, very much relevant. You know, I usually have places I could stay in New York. I remember there were some times, like when my father-in-law was out of town, I would stay by my mother-in-law. It's Yichud. You have to know the scenarios and what's going on. It's very, very prevalent. These halachos are daily. In many, many scenarios, from work to home, it's so prevalent. But Lamaisa, the heterim of Pesach Psuach Rosh Hashanah, which in general is a good heter for most scenarios. At night, it's a little bit debated because people aren't really there. Okay? Then you usually say if they have more potential heterim by a little bit here, you have to go through all the scenarios, but it definitely comes up a lot. Now, that being so, I want to transition. Now, I assume Rabbi Yisroel Salanter kept all these halachas to the fullest, all the dikdukim and beyond. I'm sure he has some chiddushim. I want to show you a pretty cool chiddush of Rabbi Yisroel Salanter. The bottom of your sheets, this is brought from a Sefer Beis Kelm, in some Sefer Torah Slavatka. Ma'aseh Rabbi Yisroel Salanter, Sheyosef beBeisol al Shal Echem in Korvov, Bal Esa Gadol. Yisroel Salanter is by one of his close associates, was a big businessman. Umanasham Bal Bais and Ma'osav. And the guy was sitting there by Yisroel, he was counting his money. Okay? Toch Kadei Shichos Benam, they were schmoozing, they were talking between them. Hotzak Bal Bais, Lasis Me'acheder, Leizer Chidar Acher. So this man had to go out of the room to another room. Miyad, Azrav Rabbi Yisroel, Asacheder V'ami B'chutz. Immediately after the man left the room, Rabbi Yisroel Salanter followed him. Lachazman, Chazar Bal Bais, Matzos Rabbi Yisroel, Shemamte Michotz Echeri. The Baal Bais came back and his chagrin, oh my gosh, my chashuv guest, Rabbi Yisroel Salanter, is just like standing there outside the room. The Tamol of Vishol, Rebbe, Lama Ata Omi B'chutz, V'ol Yosh B'nachas B'cheder. How come you're standing outside? How come you're not sitting comfortably inside the room? Anu Rabbi Yisroel. So Rabbi Yisroel Salanter answered him, Sheish Iser Lamod B'cheder Malei Ma'os. It's prohibited, it's usher to stay in the room full of money. The Choshekenu. The person's like, show me the Gemara. What? Where is there such an isser? You can't stay in a room with money? There's an isser yichud by money? Rabbi Yisroel said, yeah. It's kal v'chomer. If the Torah says that's usher for one to stay with another married woman, perhaps it'll be a sin. Kol shekain, Shal says Yachid Mama Chavero. Kol shekain, you can't be staying there with someone else's money. Where'd you get it from? Which Gemara? It's the extra. You thought Baba Basra was big enough. We saw Baba Basra was even bigger, right? ArtScroll didn't print this version yet. Maybe one day we'll get them to print it.
It's in the works.
But right? The Rov Begazel Umiyat Bel Rayos. The Gemara there was unfortunately describing the nature of people, Jewish people, and it says majority of people do gazel. A minority of people violate arayos. Hare shaveras arayos pacha shchicha. Arayos is a very small frequency. Vim yichud arayos aser, and our Chazal asered yichud with the woman. Kol shekain she yichud and mamon shel chashash gazel aser. Certainly, yichud with money is 100% aser. This is mind blowing. I'm sure no one, unless they saw the Sefer, would ever hear of such an idea. There's an Isser Yichud with money. Now, Alan's not here today, but I want to tell two stories that I heard in the span of a week. Both personally, I was told, not from, outside sources. Careful what I say. One of the people that told me the story just happened to call me again last night for a Shiloh. I said, you know what happened? The last time he asked me a Shiloh a month ago. Talmud of mine calls me up. He's a young Rav. I'll leave out the identifying details. And basically came to me that a couple of his Baal Batin came to him that they were involved in a business venture of owning real estate, apartment buildings. And the way it was structured was they had a full partnership. Just one of the partners, his job was to manage the buildings. And over years, the buildings aren't really bringing in much money. And the other partners were savvy, something must be wrong. You know what? Let's bring in a management team to run it. We'll switch it off our partner. The management team came in, and before you knew it, the place was bringing the money. Did some research, and it looks like their partner was stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there was a very interesting question. Unfortunately, all firm people. The two partners who discovered it were debating, since at that point the losses were only in the 6 digits, to their credit, pun intended, quite well-to-do Baal Batim, they were considering forgetting about the whole deal, not to make a fight, not to make a whole to-do. And they came to the Rav to discuss this, and the Rav called me. They go, okay, what should they do about it? But we'll leave aside psak. But Shalom is also worth money. I told them not to be mochel. I told them you could just not be toved now. Just ignore it for now. It could be the worst thing I want is for them to be mochel, and it turns out it's even bigger than they thought, and they regret it and this. But obviously, keep an eye on this partner, and you don't have to be toved right now. No one's. There's no court case yet. There's no statute of limitations. You can bring them later. But that was one case. Second case, another person talking to me, I haven't spoken to him in a while. He said, yeah, he had a tough year. What's so tough about your year? He says he found out that his from business partners, one of them has a name on the major Jewish institution, stole from him $10 million. These are not stories. Alan has a story with, unfortunately, irreligious Jews who made a whole Ponzi scheme, which, to Alan's credit, this is why Alan's not here. So he mixed us shvach b'fanav. But Alan, had the strength and the siyata d'shmaya to battle through it and take care of it. But, this case, unfortunately, I'm dealing with ostensibly from people. But part of frumkeit is money. That Rabbi Yisroel Salanter. Treif money is just as usher, if not more, than treif food. And that's why Rabbi Yisroel Salanter advocated we need an Isser Yichud a mamon chavera. You should not have easy access to someone else's money where it can't be traced. Now, I spoke last night to a posek. I was talking to him about this topic, and I said, "What about people that collect for causes? There are some places that they'll only send around if someone's coming collecting for an institution. He doesn't come by himself. He usually has another person there with him. That alone, it's two people. It's not just one person. There's oversight, right?"
In Detroit, all the Mishloachim have to go to the Tzedakah Project office and get a kvittel
Right.
and have it to show you. They come door to door. They come to every.
Right.
Without that, no. But no,
Right. But you still have to be afraid, right? Potentially afraid. How much money is being collected? How much money is any money being pocketed?
Yeah, this is another thing.
Now, nowadays, the fact that a lot of these things are done with checks and credit cards does make it harder, for people to pocket. But you just check cashing, and who knows how they wire it. It's with it's charged to another party, not this party, and who's swapping. You never know. So now, what I would like to do, just for a couple moments, is to speak out. Rabbi Salanter didn't give us the entire Shulchan Aruch of Hilchos Isser with money. But now that we are a little bit familiar with Hilchos Isser Yichud B'Nashim, do those heterim that we have there apply here?
No.
Right. Seemingly, the concept of a wife watching a husband and the husband in the city.
Money has no gender.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
If she's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Someone's
Seemingly,
there with the money.
money is a very, very much more dangerous.
If anything, it sounds like money is a man.
Gezela is something so easy to pocket. Potentially with the Hilchos Yichud by Nashim, right? If a woman's there with her child, that could potentially stop a scenario of Hilchos Yichud. When it comes to money matters, all it takes is a sleight of hand and money's in your pocket. That doesn't sound like it's too easy to. You could. What about this step? What do you think? The fact of the owner of the money being around, is that good enough?
Depends. If someone's good at sleight of hand, that's Lebo guys.
Huh?
Being in the same city?
Let's say even closer.
Room over?
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. Rabbi Salanter didn't consider it a heter. What was the case? Rabbi Salanter was in one room. The man went to the other room. Rabbi Salanter jumped out of the room.
Right, but what would he?
Now, it could be Rabbi Salanter being machmer on a din, but
what would he do now? In the same conversation where cash is for whatever the reason, cash is no longer king seemingly, right? And everything
Bitcoining is king.
Yeah, I mean, like, so
In a way, that's
so,
easy.
so what's he going to say now? It's the ding is immediate. It's
You
like,
can't be left alone in the room with the computer on.
I mean, I should not be left alone but that's
That's a different discussion anyway. In general.
Too young to shine.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's like, what would you say now with the digital?
I think it's a great question. You know what I think really, if we were looking to craft an Isser Yichud when it comes to money, we should look at what banks do. Banks are situations people are dealing with money. First of all, I assume they have cameras, right? Cameras are over every spot.
1,000%.
They're responsible. They get X amount of money in the morning, X amount of the day. Every transaction has to match up. So too, anytime, but it's a concept. If you have access to someone else's money, business partners, right? Unfortunately, a business, you cannot trust your partners if they have access to the money and you're not necessarily overseeing that. You can't trust them. They can't be trusted. It's a sad scenario, but unfortunately, Ruben Megazel.
There's a
Yes.
famous case in the Fort Lauderdale where This was what I would call a Jewish law firm.
Yeah.
And I happen to know this guy because I was a clerk for him. And he, first of all, he got divorced, so that didn't help his financial situation. And then he took up with a woman who wanted a lavish lifestyle. So he started stealing money from the firm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this people that have access to money, it's a dangerous scenario. And I know we have accountants in the room, but I think this is, this Rabbi Salanter needs to be publicized. Really, really does. That people have to understand that it's human. The Gemara in Bava Basra says, Ruba Megezel. And that doesn't matter how long your beard is and how much you're makbid on Chol Yisroel. Your Bein Olam Malkums could be solid. It doesn't mean your Bein Olam Chaveros. How do you steal $10 million from your business partner? You wouldn't be here without him. How do you do that?
To be fair, Chol Yisroel is a good getter for other people not
Yeah.
to steal.
I've been in a situation where ostensibly from people who have issues like that, will have said to me to my face, and cautious, he said, Rabbi, business is business and Torah is Torah. Don't get involved here.
Yeah. Yes, that's a very, very unfortunate reality. And I thought today, on Rabbi Salanter's yahrzeit, very, very appropriate, not just to talk about the Isser Yichud in general and the importance of learning halacha in depth that gives a new appreciation for things. But in particular, Rabbi Salanter is a big champion of Ben Amel Chavero, and the Isser of Gezel is something that's very important. And we could all use chizuk. And Bezrat Hashem, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh.